Welcome, folks, to another edition of Unscripted. We're doing something a little bit different this episode. We're talking top 10 wrestlers that Billy Corgan should consider for the new NWA. Now, no video, obviously, but there will be photos this time around. So, we're getting super talented with the editing. Meh. So, quick little note: this isn't a guaranteed list. This isn't the best of the best, but it's the most realistic of the best, I think, in my opinion. The ones that are on this list, I believe, could carry the promotion in some role with the right gimmick and the right attitude and the right presentation. Some you may not agree with. Some you may think are who, and others you'll be like, but what about so and so? I'm discounting anyone that works for New Japan, Impact Wrestling, Lucha Underground, AAA, CMLL, WWE, Ring of Honor, any of those types. Also, special caveat because I don't know what their future is, but if Adam Cole and Kyle O'Reilly could be convinced, they would obviously be probably the two best in terms of the right age, the right name, the right exposure, the right talent level, the right charisma, history with one another. You bring those two guys into the NWA together, and I think that would launch things off. But Cole is apparently either going to go to Orlando, or Japan, as Impact Wrestling, WWE, and New Japan are the three biggest bidders at the moment. And Corgan's not even going to be looking at talent for at least the next few months. So those two aren't going to be included on the list for obvious reasons. Guys like Ricochet and Matthew Riddle and others are kind of like pipe dreams because they all have aspirations for the WWE. So I'm looking at guys that are maybe being looked over and could really be a boom for the company. I'm also only looking at the male wrestlers, depending on how well this video gets with traction. We'll look at the female wrestlers. The female wrestling side of things is always a little bit more complicated because they don't always have the same platform, so they're a little bit more harder to track down the true gems that you may not have heard of. So that being said, let's kick it off with number 10. Yes. And that's former NWA World Heavyweight Champion. I think he's currently still the NWA World Tag Team Champion. He might not be. But he's been multiple times anyway, and that's Rob Conway. I know a lot of people are going to be like, whoa. Conway has had some history with the company for some time now. He's been one of the more reliable workers. He's gone over to Japan to wrestle with the brand. He's defended the NWA World title. He's helped put over new guys. He's a reliable, identifiable person with the NWA brand. And while I wouldn't build the company around him, having him with the company just makes sense because you could transition him to a manager. He could be the announcer. He could be the veteran wrestler. He could be a trainer, depending on how much money you want to put into this company. So he does have a lot of assets going for him. One of the guys that I think you could do a lot with, this is number 9, is Anthony Bowens. I've been following him for about 2 years now. He's super talented. He reminds me of a more, I shouldn't say more, a less polished Jason Jordan. Similar physique, similar demeanor, similar looks. The difference is Jason Jordan has the athletic background, while I think Anthony Bowens is far more charismatic. And I think that's a big boom because in today's pro wrestling, we've discredited and discounted true personality for whatever generic WWE nonsense we get. People tell me Seth Rollins is such a good promo guy, but he's not. And I hear this every day. Anthony Bowens has a long way to go, but I think he could be a foundation. He could be your Sting. He could be your Magnum TA. He could be your young blue chipper who comes on the scene and tears things apart. He doesn't have the same credentials. In fact, his biggest claim to fame right now is he was one of the guys at Tokar and Razor. Yeah, I'm calling him that. Deal with it. He was the guy that Tokar and Razor of NXT fame put down hard and gave a concussion to. That's his biggest claim to fame at the moment, but he's a super talented wrestler and really does deserve a shot at this, in my opinion. Next up at number 8 is former Billy Corgan disciple. I don't want to say disciple, but Billy Corgan really liked him. Brought him into Impact Wrestling near the end of 2016. That's Aaron Rex. He's not sure what he's going to do with his future. He hasn't said he's retiring, but he hasn't said he's not retiring. It's going to come down to a desire on his part, I think, and if Corgan can come in and basically say, hey, do you want to be NWA World Champion? And Rex would be like, why not? Then I think you could probably convince him to sign. He would be what I would I developed an accent right there for no reason. He'd be somebody that I would deem to be a good inaugural champion to get eyes on the product, a la Brian Kendrick or TJP in the cruiserweight division for WWE. But eventually, you would build up to one of the other 4 or 5 guys on this list that I think you could build around, like Bowens and guys further down this list that when you hear will be like, oh, okay. But he's somebody that I would build around almost instantaneously. Number 7, this guy flying under the radar a little bit. He's not the best of workers. He's definitely he's good. You know, he's not terrible. He's good enough. But he's got a great personality, a great physique. He's been covering up a bit lately, so I think he's maybe not able to work out to the extent he wants to. But it's Flex Armstrong at number 7. He's been around the industry. He's 34, 35. Usually wrestles up in the Northeast. He's somebody the promoters have a lot of faith in and constantly put him with the legends, the big names. And while he's not overly tall, he's probably about my height, 5'7", 5'6", 5'8". He's somebody who has a dynamic personality and could really bring eyes to the matches that he's in because he comes off as such a charismatic, arrogant, egotistical D-bag. So I think if you think about it like that, he brings more than just wrestling to the table. He brings the dynamic personality that draws people in because it's personalities, not in-ring moves, that keep people coming back. And I think people in pro wrestling, at least fans, forget that at times. Number 6, this is one of the guys I'd build around. He's young. He doesn't have much of a gimmick. He's just known as the Cowboy, I think is what he's being called now. I would change his name because it's fucking stupid, but he's a good young hand. He's 23, I think, and that's Mitch Mitchell, not to be confused with Nick Mitchell from the Spirit Squad. Mitch is a young athlete. He's competed in NWA territories before. He's got, again, the NWA lineage. He's actually faced off with number 7, Flex Armstrong, before, so he's got a built-in rivalry there you can bring in. He's a young, dynamic guy, kind of in the vein of like an old school 70s, 80s babyface. He's got the black trunks and that goofy smile, and he's got hands on his hips, just like they used to do back in the day. You'd want to modernize him. The Mitch Mitchell thing isn't really going to work. You don't want to call him the Cowboy Mitch Mitchell because that just sounds like a stripper name, like Ladies' Night at the Poke Corral. So you want to change that up and maybe go with something more along the lines of like Mitch Ryder. I don't know. Something cowboy-esque. The Bull Mitchell. I don't know. Bronco Mitchell. There you go. I just gave you a new name. Have fun. You go have fun with that. Number 5's another name with some clout behind it, and he would be, depending on it, Aaron Rex's situation at whether or not he's able to come in. This man at number 5 would be in the same vein as Aaron Rex, and that's MVP. Never really been a big fan of MVP. I think he's always been more hype than delivery. The thing that I love about MVP, though, is he is gold on the mic. He brings people's attentions to the segment when he's talking. That is something you need. If you truly remember Ric Flair, his matches were not that exciting, but his promos made you want to see him get his ass kicked. And MVP can do very similar things as a heel, and I think should be given the opportunity to truly showcase what he can do as a top guy, at least as a personality. In the ring, I don't think you're going to get 5-star matches, but you might get enough out of him to bring eyes to the product, and that's kind of the whole point here. Number 4 is former Impact Wrestling wrestler Jay Bradley. He's a longtime Billy Corgan supporter. Billy Corgan loves Jay Bradley. I love Jay Bradley. He's been competing in Impact Wrestling as Aiden O'Shea, although he hasn't really been given much to do. He had a terrible gimmick where he called himself the Thug, and he just chopped on a cigar and hung outside of Billy Corgan's dressing room for a while. Bradley's one of those guys I'd put the belt on instantly. He's got the look, the demeanor, the skills, the natural charisma, the aura. He walks in and you feel like he can beat your ass. That's a unique and rare quality in today's pro wrestling circle, where most guys are 180 pounds and 5'7". I'm not afraid of those guys. Bradley walks into a room. He commands your presence. He moves extremely well for being 6'7", 6'8". He might not be that tall, but he's still pretty tall. He has a great boomstick lariat that really pops off the screen, and given the right time behind him and the right promotion, I think Jay Bradley could still be a big star in this industry with the right focus. Number 3 is longtime rival, former Deep South wrestler, and former WWE developmental wrestler as well. Former Jay Bradley rival, I should say. That's number 3, Egotistico Fantastico, a.k.a. Robert Anthony. Anthony, Bradley, and Brian Cage were basically a threesome in Deep South together, and were considered to be the faces of the industry for the WWE circa, I think, like 2008. So it'd be good to get all three into the NWA, because they all have immense talent. They all have history together. But if you only get Bradley and Ego, I think that's a good thing. The cool thing with Robert Anthony is he's a bigger dude, but he can fly pretty fluidly. He's 34, 35, so much like Bradley, he's not a young buck, but in pro wrestling, you're really not that over the hill until you hit like 45. So you still have some time with him. He's a dynamic enough personality that pops off the screen, which is what you're looking for. He also has 2 gimmicks, the Robert Anthony gimmick, the Ego Robert Anthony gimmick, and the Egotistical Fantastico, which is like a luchador superhero gimmick that he has. So you could do something with that, and that makes himself right there extremely valuable to have a dual personality gimmick, which isn't really ever explored that often. Number 2 is Mid-Atlantic wrestler Alex Daniels. He's currently getting some buzz recently because of his match with Trevor Lee for the Mid-Atlantic Championship this past weekend, I think it was. Extremely young, athletic. He's mostly known for his stuff up north or in the Ohio region, but he's getting a lot of traction outside of it too. He's fluid, he's personable. He doesn't have much of a gimmick, and his personality doesn't pop off the screen yet, but I think in 2, 3, or 4 years, we're talking about him being the best young high flyer in the game. And if you're Billy Corgan, you should really consider hopping on this one when you get the opportunity, when you have the chance, because guys like this don't come around all too often. He's extremely good in the ring. Will he get better, though? Because he's not grading out as a top-tier wrestler at the moment, but the idea is that he's going to get better. And I think Daniels will, and I think if you have Alex Daniels and a Mitch Mitchell on your roster, granted with different names, hopefully, you could really build something special with those two to carry you over into the next 5-10 years if you're around that long. Before we get to number 1, quick little honorable mentions. First and foremost, former Impact Wrestling champion Mr. Anderson, I think, is a viable commodity you could go to. I'm still concerned about the reason why he left the company. No one's really ever talked about why, but there's always been rumors as to why. You could look them up yourselves. If he's willing to come in and work for you, I think he can provide you a decent name in the mid-card. Maybe if you get a television title or an internet title going, he could contend for that, help put over the young stars, and much like a Rob Conway, help out training, because he and Sean Davari, who have been good friends for a while, have their own school now. So I think you could do something there. Another honorable mention goes to Tim Storm, the current 52-year-old NWA World Heavyweight Champion. I'm not dismissing him because of his age. He's a spry, young 52. He's efficient. He's not going to set the world on fire, but if you put Tim Storm and Rob Conway in the company as former NWA World Champions who are kind of like going around beating up the young guns, trying to make them prove they deserve to be in here, you could get a decent tag team out of that. Another guy that I think could be on his way to the new NWA and maybe as a world champion is Josephus, who wrestled in Impact Wrestling for one match as Beauregard. Josephus is somebody who kind of looks like Luke Harper, Brody Lee. There we go. He's got the long, crazy hair. He has black trunks and fur boots, and he throws elbows and clotheslines just like a certain WWE wrestler at the moment. So I think, a guy like him who Billy Corgan's been high on for a long time, I think he comes in and could be your big monster heel right off the bat. Number one, most of this list you've either never heard of or you're not suspecting or you don't want. I understand that. I'm not sitting here trying to make a fantasy list of guys that you want to see based off of what they did in New Japan or WWE. Because if that was the case, it'd be Kenny Omega, it'd be Eddie Edwards, Davey Richards, Matt Sydal, EC3, John Cena. I just go get the biggest of the big. But we're going realistic here, and realistically, I think number one makes the most sense. He's got the look, the size, the charisma, the ability to wrestle. He's a bit older. He's 34, but he took a lot of years in between wrestling, so his body's not nearly as banged up. And that's former, current OVW wrestler Devin Driscoll. Driscoll's a guy who I've seen a lot of in the last few years. He moves very well. He's got great footwork. He has a good eye for how to make the audience care about his matches. In OVW, it's hard enough to get over because the fans see you every week. So you have to be good enough to bring them on this journey with you each and every week. Driscoll's been able to do that. The one thing that worries me about Driscoll is there's a lot of databases out there that record matches, and if you put them up against one another, they paint a pretty good picture of what you're looking at. Driscoll, to me, is somebody who is either too inconsistent with getting bookings or too inconsistent with getting major bookings that they're not getting recorded. So I'm a little hesitant about his experience level at this point, but he's got enough in him that I'd be willing to give him a run to see if he can prove me wrong. But if he can come in here, do the work, showcase a personality on a major level, wrestle some really good matches, he's the de facto first world champion that I truly would build around because he's got it all. It's just a matter of time to see if he can put it together for this company to work. Now, again, I know a lot of you guys were expecting, your Kenny Omegas and your Chuck Taylors, although Chuck Taylor would have been great for this list, not going to lie. This list seems reasonable. This list seems honest. It seems possible. I didn't cover the tag teams. I might do a tag team list later. Names off the top of my head: the Carinos, Justin and Diamond, I think his name was. Justin Dean, maybe they were with Global Force Wrestling for a little while. The Bravados, the Von Erichs, a lot of brother tag teams because that's what the NWA used to be about. Also the Killer Elite Squad, but I don't know how their deal with the NWA and New Japan would conflict with one another, even though they've been NWA World Tag Team Champions quite a bit in the last few years. And Cody Hall and his tag team partner, I forget his name off the top of my head, from the Global Tag League in NOAH, I think would be another good addition, but we'll have to see what happens there. But I'll make a separate individual tag team list and probably a separate individual women's list, depending on how this video does. So thanks for listening, guys. Be sure to check out realnerdcorp.com. Like, subscribe, follow, share, do all that awesome stuff that you do on YouTube. Follow us on Twitter at NerdCorp, on Tumblr at nerdcorp.tumblr.com. And thanks for checking in with the video, and leave me who you would like to see, realistically speaking, down in the comments below. Until next time, I got nothing.